Hello, bonjour, kia ora, and welcome. Before I begin, I'd like to pay my respects to the Indigenous owners of the land, both here at home in New Zealand and in Canada, and from anywhere else in the world from which we are meeting today. Thanks so much to Kim and Melissa for having me come and join this meeting. It's really exciting. I wish I could be there in person, but of course, as we know, with world events, that's just not possible right now. But I'm going to try and give you an engaging, snappy Zoom presentation that we can all enjoy. And then I'll come and join you later on as I roll out of bed first thing in the morning here in New Zealand, and we can chat all things advertising and digital media. So I'm just going to switch over now to my PowerPoint and go through slides, and it shouldn't be any more than 20 minutes long. Okay, here we go. All right, so I'm just gonna hide my little face there so it's not distracting. Great. So we're gonna talk about digital tracking online food advertising. And I imagine a lot of you have done research like this. It's been a focus of some of my research for the past few years. I'm just gonna share some of the projects I've been involved with, what I view as some of the challenges, and perhaps some future work we could be looking at in this area. Facebook stress may worsen asthma, claim MDs. Could Facebook be making you fat? Instagram worst for young mental health. And perhaps most damning of all, Donald Trump, without Twitter, I would not be here. And I think it's fair to say that there is a fair bit of negative popular press about the harms of social media and how it's going to, ruin us all. And certainly with during the COVID-19 outbreak, we've seen all kinds of myths and fake news circulating on social media. I think it's really easy to think that social media is this most evil thing that cannot be trusted. And obviously I'm going to present here today a lot of examples of how the processed food industry, the junk food industry, whatever you want to call them, has also making use of these platforms in a way that is harmful to young people and to all people really. But I also want to make it clear that I'm actually a big fan of social media. I think there's lots of great things about it. I'm not one of these negative tech people who thinks that, social media is a plague on our society and it should all be shut down. I think it's awesome. I use it all the time myself. So I just want to have that disclaimer up front. So what's the goal of social media platforms? What is it that they're trying to do? Well, they want you on the site as often as possible for as long as possible. So you either have to really enjoy it or feel you have to do it. Like you'll have major FOMO if you don't, right? You'll have major fear of missing out if you're not on these sites. So that's their goal. But why is that their goal? Why do they want you on the site as often as possible for as long as possible? So that you're exposed to as much advertising as possible. And then the platform makes money. Now, I'm sure none of you have ever paid for a Facebook account or an Instagram account. This is the revenue. This is the advertising money. This is how these platforms operate. This is the business model. So they want you on the site as long as possible, as often as possible, so you're exposed to as much advertising as possible. But how can they do this? If they just sent you a stream of ads constantly, these platforms wouldn't be popular. They would be boring. They would be annoying. People would be really turned off. So how can they get this balance right? Well, the first thing they need you to do is to contribute content, right? You need to post things like selfies and pictures of your dinner and, pictures of your trip or your musings or your rant of the day, whatever it is you like to post. And then they can better target advertising to you, right? If they know your likes and preferences, the things that get you excited, then they can throw advertising at you that doesn't annoy you and cause you to go off the platform. It actually makes you enjoy the platform more. Now, think about the last time you posted a photo. It could be anything. Maybe it was a selfie. You posted it. How long did you wait before you checked back to see if anybody had liked or commented on that photo? Did you wait 30 seconds? Did you wait a minute? And this is what this quote here is getting at. We need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content. And that's going to get you more likes and comments. It's a social validation feedback loop. Exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. And that was Sean Parker, who is the founding president of Facebook. That's his quote. And he's also, if you've seen the movie, The Social Network, he's also the founder of Napster. Now, what this basically means is that this sort of feedback loop where you post things up and people like it and give you positive feedback, it makes you feel good, means that you'll tolerate things like advertising. You might even enjoy, more than tolerate it, you might actually jump on in and become a promoter of products yourself. And I'm going to talk you through some examples of that and how that works. So when we're researching food promotions on social media, there's a few sort of standard methodologies available. You can do ad and post monitoring. You can do content analysis of either user accounts or by tracking things like hashtags or topics. You can do simple case studies saying that this is how Coca-Cola is selling their latest lower sugar beverage, that kind of thing, or how Domino's is getting people to order pizza on Monday nights. You can do things like surveys and people self-report experiences. And then, of course, I've put an asterisk next to this one, is tracking user activity, which is proving to be, it's quite costly and quite difficult, whereas these other methods are much more manageable. And instead of going through these here in detail, I'm going to take you through some examples of work I've done that use some of these methodologies and show you the kind of results we expect and what we maybe need to do for future research. Now, the challenges with social media research, most of you will probably be familiar with these, is that a lot of the content is not necessarily recognized or even revealed to be advertising. And that's intentional, obviously, but it's also that sometimes people it's not that they're not media literate, it's that, there's just not the acknowledgement that when they like a post by Coca-Cola, that's a form of an ad, rather than, something that they're on TV that interrupts their programming. You can readily identify that being an ad. Advertising is not generally objectionable content either. Like, I know everyone in this room is really concerned about food advertising, particularly its impact on young people. But when you survey parents or general public, they don't find food advertising to be that objectionable. It's more things that are violent, things that would have sexual overtones are very concerning to parents, things like privacy online. But in terms of food, it's just not up there on sort of people's list of key concerns. Many social media platforms, there's new ones emerging all the time. Anyone here in the room on TikTok? Or if anyone's under 30, you're allowed to be on TikTok. If you're over 30, I think it's a bit, you're not really the target audience for that one. Any research and social policy will then always lag behind current trends. It's a current catch-up, but we're used to that in public health, particularly when it comes to the commercial determinants of health. We are always playing catch-up. It's partly a function of not being funded very well in comparison to the people we're trying to regulate. We have content exposure depends on a user profile and their actions. This is that tailored news feed, right? What I look on my Facebook page is very different from the person sitting next to me, even if we're in the same household, go on the same trips, use the same grocery store, whatever. It's very fine-tuned. So it's really hard to know what individuals are being exposed to. And you can have things like micro-targeting as well, where only a really specific portion of the population is being targeted with advertising. And of course, the temporal nature of the content. Something that's posted on Facebook today is gone tomorrow, very easily and quickly. The cost of accessing quality data is a major barrier for most researchers versus collecting our own data, which is time-consuming, often incomplete, and is difficult to analyze. And of course, I think this is something, our over-focus on children as a target audience. We're always sort of defaulting to, oh, we've got to protect children from this advertising. It's mostly harmful to children. Think of the children. Whereas I think we need to expand beyond that and be concerned about teenagers, young people. These are the biggest users of these social media platforms. And they're also the biggest, most vulnerable to processed food industry marketing. This is when their diets really go downhill. Young adults is when we see the biggest gains in weight gain, particularly in high-income countries. They have a lot more control over children's diet and what children see compared to young adults and teenagers. This is one of our earlier papers, myself and a team of people from Australia, where we did a content analysis study looking at popular brands in Australia, and these were brands of popular food and beverages. And we looked at everything from Subway, Coca-Cola, Slurpee, Maltesers. What we wanted to do was to look at the kinds of advertising techniques that were being used, who was viewing these pages, how much traffic they were getting, and sort of just document what was unique about these social media platforms in terms of energy dense, nutrient poor food promotions. So the first thing we had to do was identify popular pages and content. This is kind of the first step in most of these content analysis type studies. We used a social media monitoring service called Social Bakers, where you can search by topic and find out what are the most popular pages in your region for a particular topic. So we just looked at food, and we were quickly given a rank of the pages that were most popular, and those were the ones that we decided to include in our study. And then you simply have to extract data to monitor what it is that you're looking at. So we did everything from extracting actual page posts, the images they were posting, and we also captured the freely available analytics, which isn't a lot compared to what the behind the scenes analytics are, where you can fine tune down to, you know, how many people per second are looking at your page and from where. But it was interesting to be able to get a snapshot of just how active the page was during a particular week, what age group it was most appealing to. And we included those in our study summary as well, our results. Oh, sorry, I've got that back on there again. Or no, I've just gone the wrong way. So this page from the Facebook study was the most popular food and beverage brand page in Australia at the time. And they actually sought out to be. This is, for those who aren't from Australia, this is an ice cream product called Buffalo Bill. And he has a sort of a, what would you call it? Like a piece of gum, a gumball, but it's chewing gum for a nose. And he does very Australian things like going to the Outback, blah, 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 things like this. And he had over 1 million likes at the time on the page. And the reason why he was so popular is the company actually set out to be the most popular Facebook page at that time. It was a big campaign that they had. So this was part of the promotional effort. They're no longer the number one. Number one would be probably Red Bull and Coca-Cola now. Anyway, the thing we noticed from analyzing all these posts was that it was overwhelmingly about feelings, not facts. This is what these pages were portraying. And that's really not that surprising. People don't come to social media or to their favorite brands to get information. They come to get a feeling. And they achieve this through use of imagery. This is Red Bull. It's better to burn out than to fade away. It's very clear here that if you were looking at these, it's all about speed and racing and living on the edge. And it was really fascinating to us that there was a minuscule number of posts that actually featured Red Bull, the product itself. In fact, I can't even think of any that were prominent. So if you were to sort of jet down here from, you know, Mars or Venus, and you've never been to Earth before, and you would think Red Bull was a racing car or something. You would have no idea that it was this, you know, slightly metallic tasting caffeinated sugary drink. They also really gave back to members. By members, I mean people who would like the page. So Skittles, for example, they encourage you to submit pictures of yourself, posing with a product, and encouraging you to you know, send it in, and they would call you the best fan forever. Well, for the week anyway. So they would share your picture. And they weren't offering any free Skittles or any incentives like cash or anything like that. This was purely to get you to do the marketing for them. But people did it because they got their 15 minutes of social media fame. Think back to my first couple of slides. You've got to enjoy being on social media. You've got to get those likes and shares and dopamine hits, right? And this is a really great way to get them. Much more exposure than on your own page. The brands are also incredibly useful. Domino's, for example, always had coupons on Mondays, ads on Mondays when people are, you know, facing the rest of the week. They're tired. They don't feel like cooking that night. And of course, if you ordered right. You could also order right in the Facebook app itself. You didn't have to go off to another site, or, it was very much embedded. Click a couple buttons. 20 minutes later, you've got pizza delivered at your door. So really, really useful. No sort of jumping through hoops to get yourself a tasty pizza. And of course, if you order and one of your friends orders too, maybe next time you'll get half price garlic bread, right? Look, and this same study could be repeated on Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. These sort of content analysis to see, what kind of promotional techniques are they using? Who are they most appealing to? And we got quite a lot of press coverage for that story, because it's really, when you see all that evidence taken together, it's really quite, I think, for a lot of people, shocking just how cynically these companies are targeting young people. My favorite one here is, how you could just tweet the pizza emoticon and instantly Domino's would appear at your door. Like, oh, I don't have the energy to type the word pizza. I could just send this emoticon. Incredibly useful, incredibly helpful, these companies. We also did a similar study on Instagram, where we did a content analysis of, again, it was popular Instagram posts. We wanted to see how much activity, what sort of hashtags they were using, different marketing results. And what we really was apparent to us is that these curated posts manipulated consumer emotion rather than presenting information about their products. And I think a lot of times these companies try and say, oh, these ads are just about giving people information. Consumers deserve information so they can decide what products they want to buy. There's literally no information in any of these posts. It was all emotional appeals. And we felt that, policy action needed to better reflect the current media environment. Most policy action focuses on children's television and children's media, and very, very, very little is being done about their online experiences, where most of their screen time is being spent. So hashtag and user monitoring, some of the drawbacks for this is if you just monitor a hashtag on a social media platform, that platform will curate a list for you. It will be the most sort of frequent, popular things will float to the top. They'll only show you a portion. You don't get a real sense of the depth or the full sort of data set of what's happening there. But it can be very useful to help give you ideas about what's important, what's emerging. And particularly if you had like grad students or say postdoc students, it would be a good way for them to collect it over a course of time, where they continually monitored the same hashtag over say a 3 or 6 month period to see what kind of things change, what kind of things people are getting. And of course, monitoring accounts. I know for me on my own Twitter account, I follow things like Coca-Cola just to keep on top of what they're doing. It can be those sort of advocacy moments where you find quite egregious examples of the things they're doing that can be used in sort of getting press attention or to try and push policy reform. There are challenges though with image and data capture. We, for our Instagram paper, worked with the IT department at the university. It's really important, I think, to span out of public health only and to have multi-stakeholder partnerships. And they were able to develop a way of opening up the Instagram algorithm backdoor for us so that all the images could automatically be downloaded with all their metadata attached so we could analyze them. And that's hugely time-saving. Doing it manually, as we did with the Facebook study, as that was the only really way to do it, took up incredible amounts of time. Tracking individual user exposure. Obviously, surveys are really helpful. This is a survey study we had published a couple of years ago now, looking where we asked children about their eating preferences, what brands they liked, but we also asked them about really simple things about if they'd ever watched a food brand video on YouTube, or whether they would ever purchase food online, and if they had seen any of their favorite food brands advertised online. And for children that they had a much higher frequency of consumption of unhealthy food and drinks. And particularly the purchasing food online was really interesting to me. These were young children aged 10 to 16. And often the child in the house is designated as the Friday night takeaway order or the pizza order, because it is so simple to do, and they can feel like a little responsibility that they have. But the children who were sort of tasked with that were far more likely to consume unhealthy drinks. But then or unhealthy foods and drinks. It was really interesting. Of course, surveys will only take you so far. And what a study that we've been working on for quite a long time now, which has been proven to be really challenging, was we wanted to record in real time young people's social media use, so we could see how many ads they were exposed to over the course of their sort of, regular social media use. And so the idea was that we would recruit young people to the study. We would get them to turn a recorder on their phone every time they went on, say, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever. And then we would take those videos from them and we would analyze them to sort of count the number of food marketing impressions they received. It was really challenging to recruit children to the study, first of all. Well, actually, pre that, it was actually really challenging to get ethics approval for the study. They wouldn't allow us to include very young children in the study, only teenagers. We had to meet with them and talk them through the privacy concerns and how we would manage all of that. And we got through it, but I've never had such a process before. It's probably good. I mean, we want to make sure we protect children, of course. And then getting people to record their social media use, turning on the video, it's really hard to remember to do that. And we realized that children are in our study were on their phones for 5 or 6 hours a day often. So it just was not practical for them to record that entire time. So what we would have them do is to record for 3 15-minute sessions 3 times a week, at least one weekday, one weekend, and then the other day could be an optional day. And then they would just download those 15-minute chunks to a server. So we piloted that to get the method right to see if it would work, and it did. And then last year we actually recruited a representative sample. We've had the children and the teenagers go through the study now, and my co-investigator Bridget Kelly is just on maternity leave, and then we will be completing that analysis and hope to have something to share. But it was a really difficult study to get off the ground. It was really hard to recruit. It was really hard to teach people how to record the data, then upload it to a secure database, and then actually watching the data and analyzing it is super time consuming. So it's feasible-ish, I guess, but watch this space for our results. And finally, I'd just like to close with the fact that, case studies are still really useful, particularly for researchers who work with advocates, because companies, particularly during COVID-19, I'm sure this is happening in Canada as well, we've seen it here in New Zealand and Australia, of companies just taking advantage of that and doing some just insane promotions targeting young kids, and who are obviously spending a lot more time on screens because they're at home with working parents. They're a lot more vulnerable, and the amount of advertising for food, alcohol, e-cigarettes, you name it, has just skyrocketed. And because we're all vulnerable in our homes, and the only thing we can really buy is food. But I think it's important to note that consumers themselves willingly engage with brands and create free word of mouth that marketers have minimal control over. Users require very little incentive to openly interact with junk food brands. Increasing the visibility of users on social media among their peers or fellow consumers is a distinctive social media marketing tactic, which really gets them on side. People become advocates for these brands. They don't see their behavior as predatory or problematic. Particularly if you are an influencer, which I haven't really talked about, you might even financially benefit from this or see it as a real positive that a brand has chosen you to, spruik its wares. And of course, just one of the most popular products that use social media particularly well are sugar-sweetened soda and energy drinks. And we know without a doubt that the consumption of these products is linked to obesity. And I think the evidence there is crystal clear. Say what you will about a balanced diet and, no food is an evil food or whatever. We know absolutely that sugary drinks consumed by children is incredibly harmful, and they're very good in this space. Some public health implications. Of course, much of our work, I think I've already made this point, has been focused on children's programs and viewing hours. But that just leaves huge gaps, particularly when most of their screen time, particularly of teenagers, is on phones and iPads and the like. And if people are engaging with social media content because it makes them feel good, it may mean that certain modes of our own health promotion messages that are highly effective in other forms of media will not work on social media. And by that, I mean the scare type campaigns that have worked really well in tobacco, where we show the health effects of smoking, which motivates people to quit. People don't engage with things that they don't like on social media, so it's very hard to cut through with scary public health messages. Some policy implications: we need to redefine what advertising is when it's primarily being led by consumers themselves interacting with brands. Our traditional definitions just no longer work. It really blurs the line between who's a consumer and who's a brand owner. We need to think about some social counter marketing as well. Again, that's probably a whole other field of investigation, but just something to raise. And of course, in terms of reporting and regulation, social media is just, people are talking about it, they're concerned about it, but we just don't know the how-to part just yet. Facebook does have some policies around harmful advertising. Tobacco and alcohol are two examples I've just put up here. Not a lot around food. Some emerging ones around, making health claims that are unfounded, but nothing really solid or concrete. Primarily complaint-based system as well, not a proactive one. And this is my contact info. I will be joining you all soonish for the rest of the call. But I'll just have to stumble out of bed at about 6 a.m. and I'll see you then. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen there and give a wave and a thank you. And maybe you can think about a few questions we could talk about when I come on. But you are, again, welcome to email me or tweet me at any time. Thank you.